Jablonski, Executive Director of the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy. We're pleased tonight that the Predergast Library invited the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy to put together a session of their critical discussion series. I'd like to thank Bobby Caswell for getting in touch with me and inviting us to do this. And I'd like to thank all of our panelists who our moderator will introduce. Thank you. Andrew Nixion, moderator.
I'm Andrew Nixion, the moderator. And I have the pleasure to introduce and keep on time this evening's guests. So the first thing I have to do is keep myself on time. And I have a couple introductory remarks, and then we'll get started with our first speaker, which will be John again. I'm a member of the Chautauqua Lake Management Commission. I'm the one that doesn't know as much as the rest of them, and that's why I'm the moderator. But I do know this: the condition of the area's lakes is vital to our tourism industry, which is what I represent, as well as the local economy in general. There are a lot of challenges that threaten the benefits that our lakes provide to the region. And for every challenge, there are a number of potential strategies and varying viewpoints on how certain strategies should be implemented, if at all. And there is significant constraint on the amount of funding available to implement the top priority strategies. Fortunately, there is a plan for how to address what can be done in Chautauqua Lake and its equally important watershed area. Shortly, a document containing specific recommendations and guidelines for Chautauqua Lake's in-lake activities will be available also. But for these plans to make a difference, it will be essential that the organizations that work to improve Chautauqua Lake's conditions do so in concert and in accordance with planned priorities. Fortunately, they are already beginning to do this in many specific ways. So that's what we're here to hear tonight. And so I'll lead off by asking John Jablonski, Executive Director of the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, to begin his comments.
The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy has been in operation since 1990, and our purpose in the Chautauqua region is to attack the root causes of the lake's problems and the other waterways of our county. Our mission is to preserve and enhance the water quality, scenic beauty, and ecological health of the lake streams and watersheds of the Chautauqua region. So we have many problems in our lakes, and tonight we're focusing on Chautauqua Lake. The biggest thing that faces our lake is that we have too much phosphorus going into our lake. Phosphorus is the driving nutrient that fuels our plant and algae problems, and some of the causes of that, as you can see on the slide, farming, cropland provides about 31% of the phosphorus, game pasture land provides about 21% of the phosphorus, coming from agriculture and fueling our lake's plant and algae growth. Also, our wastewater treatment plants are another important cause of that. We have about 27% of the phosphorus coming into the lake from our wastewater treatment plants. That's not counting the septic systems going in the lake. That's only the public treatment plants. Those public treatment plants put out soluble phosphorus. A large percentage of the phosphorus that comes out of those plants is in the form that is easily available, quickly available to the algae to grow. That's a very important thing we need to address. Another important issue in the watershed is the loss of topsoil, erosion, sedimentation. This is a picture of a cornfield in the Predergast Creek watershed. This is our conservationist, David Anderson, standing next to that. And you can see this topsoil. This creek is moving toward that bank, eating up that bank, which then results in next picture. This is what comes out at the end when we have a rainstorm and water comes out. One goes into the lake. With your naked eye, you can see deltas piling up at the ends of our creek mouths. What you see are the sand and gravel building up, but probably 60–70% of what comes out of that previous slide there, 60–70% of that is the silt and clay that you don't see building up in the mouth of the creek. That spreads out over the bottom of the lake. that silt and clay is what's carrying the phosphorus that then settles on the ground at the bottom of the lake. Got mud, we're losing our depth. Garbage stream out and street end. This is a picture of Goose Creek. This is the site on Goose Creek. This is pasture land. This is the top of the pasture that is caved into this creek. This specific site has been estimated by the county's Goose Creek study that's underway to lose 6,000 tons of topsoil a year. I said 6,000 tons. And it's hard to believe, but if you go out and look at this site, it's over 3,000 feet long, and you then get situations of many. Most of you probably have seen this picture, or a version of this picture. This is the creek mouth, this is the mud going in the lake in front of that property. As many of you know, this area, I think 2 years ago, by the Chautauqua Lake Association, was very extensive dense plant growth in that area. So what happens when you put too much phosphorus, P, the symbol for phosphorus, and mud into the lake, we get lots of weeds. Plants are very, very beneficial to the lake, but not when they're growing to the degree that we're experiencing them. So how are we going to deal with our plants in Chautauqua Lake? First, we have to stop the mudness. This is a picture of a road ditch. One of the problems we continue to have in our county is the maintenance of road ditches, roads. Our town and village highway superintendents are starting to do a lot better job on that, and we need a lot more cooperation from the county and the state in that department. If we want less weeds, we have to keep the P out of the lake, phosphorus. And excess phosphorus gives us excess algae. The algae dies, the algae sinks, the algae then drops to the bottom of the lake, decomposes, and the phosphorus is raised again as more plants. So the soluble phosphorus goes in, is used by the algae, it dies, sinks to the bottom, and then that also contributes to the plant growth. So what's the Conservancy doing about this? We have our Healthy Landscapes, Healthy Waters program. Much of the quality of our lake is dictated by what happens in our watershed. We don't have a pristine watershed. For a healthy lake, we should have a minimum of about 70% of the entire lake watershed forested. So we've got a lot of the land has gone back to forest over the last 100 years, but it's now going back in the other direction, being more developed. This is a picture of a field on Goose Creek. This is pasture land, and this is the way the creek looks at the other end of the pasture, downstream from that previous picture I showed you. Sedimentation, approximately 71% of the phosphorus is coming from farm fields. This is a picture again of David Anderson, our conservationist. One of the major initiatives we have underway, which started 2 years ago and will continue in 2013. We were lucky to receive grants from the Chaut Foundation and the New York State Conservation Partnership Program, administered by the Land Trust Alliance of New York. And that funded essentially one full-time conservationist, which we've broken up into 3 part-time conservationists. And David Anderson is responsible for going out at targeted sites on Goose Creek and other creeks in the watershed and identifying the landowners and then meeting with the landowners and letting them know that there are resources available with their Soil and Water Conservation District and our Natural Resources Conservation Service, a division of the federal government, to provide technical assistance on how to deal with these situations when we have these seriously collapsing stream banks. A big part of what we're doing right now is tying those landowners to the people who can help them design projects to save the topsoil and also to look for state and federal and county funding to try to assist the landowners to deal with these problems. It's a very important partnership. It's going well so far. We're working on erosion control, streamside buffer plantings, hopefully fencing the cattle out of the streams. David has met with landowners who have applied for funding to deal with over 2.5 miles of these eroded stream banks in the watershed. So it's doing a really good job. We're very excited with the cooperation that's taking place between the agencies on this project. Another part of our Healthy Landscaping, Healthy Lake project is working with lakeshore property owners. In this picture is another one of our part-time conservationists, Jane Conroe, and she has worked using some bed tax money through the Chautauqua Management Commission over the past few years, and working with landowners to put in lakeshore vegetation, restore more native vegetation to our lakeshore. The plants are better able to intercept groundwater and suck up nutrients than a thin layer of grass and grass roots are able to. It also provides habitat for the insects that live in the lake that eat the nuisance plants. The vegetation on the lakeshore also provides better, the roots of the vegetation the lakeshore better against the wave action, wind action, and ice action as well. She's been working with landowners and hopes to do over 2,000 feet of lakeshore with property owners in the next couple of years. These are some of the other projects that we've been involved with. She's been involved with. This is a rain garden at Point Chautauqua. This is a sign that we work with the property owners at the Bemis condo put up to explain what the rain gardens are there. And this is the Juanita shoreline, which we just learned is going to be putting a buffer on several hundred feet this coming growing season. We're assisting landowners in conserving the watershed, forests, and stream corridors. We're working with landowners who would like to conserve their land using easements. One in the Predergast Creek watershed, another one on Bemis Creek, another one up on Whitlow Creek right now. So we're excited about that work. This is out of the landowner on Bemis Creek. And David has initiated a program to cooperate with the local chapter of Chaut Unlimited. They're establishing the Western Southern Tier chapter, which is presently based in Red House. And he is working with high school students at Jamestown High School to engage them in doing stream plantings on our streams. The first two streams they're going to plant are, the first stream they're going to plant, they have 2 days planned to plant willows and other shrubs along Clear Creek, which is one of the premier trout streams in the Chautauqua region. Hopefully in the future we will be able to line up some things with creeks in the Chautauqua Lake watershed. And also engaging Chaut Unlimited potentially opens up even more volunteers, because if we can make our streams in our watershed able to successfully support trout, they will deliver clean water to our lake as well. So both trout fishing and land and all the different properties as well. Watershed land conservation is a big part of what the Conservancy continues to do. Less than 10% of lake shoreline is in a natural condition, and national studies have shown that lake shoreline condition, the more natural lake shoreline is, the better quality lake water you have. And the Conservancy has conserved over 2 miles of Chautauqua Lake and South shoreline. We recently reached an agreement with landowners in Whitney Bay to conserve 9 acres of wetlands there, over 300 feet of lakeshore. That's a picture of what it looks like. Beautiful wildlife spot, popular with not trout fishing, ice fishermen. So we're working on raising the funds to conserve that this summer. Another area we're working is Elm Flats. We had one of our members donate 30 acres to us last fall, conserving about 900 feet of big inlet, and we're working with other owners out there to try to conserve lands adjoining the property. That's the biggest wetland in the entire Chautauqua Lake watershed up in northern Hartfield. It stores a tremendous amount of water. We want to make sure that it stays intact and is not drained or filled so that it doesn't contribute to flooding conditions in the lake. Another area we're working, our other part-time conservationist is adept at designing, using social media, the internet, websites, Facebook, and has put together a lot of materials for us. We continue to be publishing our shed sheet twice this year to get information out to our members, lakefront property owners, on what all of you can do to help take care of the lake. We put articles in newspapers and various other media as well. some of the things that she is working on out there. There's a coloring book that she put together that we hope to get into schools and local restaurants. She created a Watershed Defenders series, our bird logo. We invite all of you to join to like us on Facebook if you're on Facebook to get current activities. We encourage people to sign up for our e-news by doing that on our website so you're aware of all that we have going on. We try to keep people abreast as when there's county and other agencies are holding meetings as well. Other activities the Conservancy has are storing our preserves. We have 618 acres around the county now. We have to make sure that invasive species don't overtake those, just like we have invasive species, non-native plants in the lake. We have non-native plants like knotweed and common reed that in some cases taking over parts of our, trying to take over parts of our preserves too. So we have invasive species poll coming up on May 4th at our Goose Creek site, and a spring wildflower tour on May 11th. And those are in addition to many of the other programs that we hold. Another program you may or may not know about is we pay for an artist educator to work with children in our area schools. So it's working with Jamestown, Venus Point, Chautauqua, and Southwestern districts. And reaches several hundred students a year with our Watershed model, and they actually do, depending on the different things they're working on, different classes do sometimes do paper mache puppets of the watershed creatures. So in summary, we're arresting the flow of nutrients and sediments going into the lake and into its tributaries. Our healthy waters and healthy landscaping programs are reducing the phosphorus and sedimentation to control algae and plant growth. We're conserving the most important watershed sites for a healthy lake, those sites that collect, store, filter, and deliver clean waters to our lake. We're a membership organization, we're not a government organization. We encourage all of you to become members of our organization and support our group and the other groups around the lake. We're a countywide organization, and we work countywide, not just Chautauqua Lake. So I thank you very much for coming out tonight, and hopefully learn something new from each of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And John did that very well, as always. We did it with 1 minute to spare. Our next presenter is the president of Chautauqua Lake Association, Conroe. Doug.
Thank you, Andrew. For me, the most important part of the evening is Q&A. So I much prefer to get us to that point rather than you have to listen to me the whole time. And our other members here that we work in partnership with are well worth listening to. A clean lake is everyone's business. Over 60 years ago, when the civic leaders and industrialists got together to found the Chautauqua Lake Association, they put that statement on their letterhead. And that statement is just as important today as it was back then. It's critical. Chautauqua Lake Association does not own the lake. Chautauqua Lake Association does not regulate the lake. Chautauqua Lake Association does not control the lake. Chautauqua Lake Association is a steward here to help maintain the lake. And we only do it because it's everyone's lake, and therefore everyone's business, and we put together a coalition of everyone, some groups I'll mention in a moment, to make that happen as economically and as efficiently as is possible. And I'll talk about that. Currently, we're gearing up for a 12-week, 5 days a week, 10 hours a day, 3-crew lake maintenance operation this summer, in addition to some other support activities. That's the program that we believe, given our experience on the lake, that will be required in a normal year of lake maintenance. That's a hefty program. And fortunately, this community has come together and allows that program to happen. We're optimistic that it can this year. We're still raising money to hopefully get there. We're not there yet. The projected cost of that operation this year will be $676,626. It's a predicted expense that it's going to take to run those 3 crews, not for the whole summer, but for the main recreational season of the summer out there. Components of funding. We have a fund drive to businesses and individuals. 28% of our income generally comes from there. We're working at increasing that. Local governments currently at a 20% of that figure. We're working at increasing that. Local foundations, 16%. We don't know how much longer we'll be able to receive that much money. We're very fortunate. Special programs, 5%. We're going to be doing some pay-as-you-go for some special services. Fundraisers, we're taking on various fundraisers. You saw the recent ice pick, 3%. We have asks outstanding with groups currently for $60,000, that's 8%. We're optimistic that they'll come forward. If they aren't, we're going to have to find someone to replace it. That leaves us with a yet unknown income of $40,000 or 6%. That's the funding scenario that it takes to make this program go forward. Lake maintenance will never not be needed. We need to understand that Chautauqua Lake will always require at least a $750,000 lake maintenance budget. You've seen in the newspaper, I talk about geriatric care and the word assisted living at this point in time. It's a mature lake, 16,000 years old, plus or minus. It's always going to require lake maintenance. It's always going to require some form of harvesting. That's a fact of life. How you put your options together, harvesting will always be in the picture. Our method of assembling community sectors under the nonprofit umbrella, we've added up and saves this community at least $2 million annually. Because of what we're able to do through the nonprofit, through volunteers, through assembling different groups. If you had to rely on public works departments to do this, and it's a roadway, it's a highway, or if you had to bring in private contractors, we've priced them. We're saving, even at $676,000, an additional $2 million. So it's not an inexpensive proposition maintaining Chautauqua Lake. Some people say it's the state's lake. Well, let them maintain it. That's a cop-out as far as I'm concerned. It's our lake. Yes, the state needs to come to the table. They have, and they are. And it's especially difficult right now. We don't know if they'll be at the table this year, but we didn't know it last year. And they gave us a wonderful surprise we're working with this year. But it's our lake. We're the ones that drink the water out of it. We're the ones that swim in it. We're the ones that view it. We're the ones that boat in it. We're the ones that work at businesses that are here because the lake is here that brings that business activity to town. The CLA is knowledgeable of various lake maintenance options. Spraying is often considered by the general public to be the solution. But we've got experience there, and we keep up with it, and we understand it. We've chosen harvesting as our method of choice. It's, in our opinion, less expensive than other options. It allows for whole lake servicing. If you look at the cost of the other options, when you implement them, you probably are not going to be able to service the whole lake with the funds that are needed. Harvesting allows us to service every community on the lake. It's the least environmentally injurious to the lake. When you look at the other options, what's the impact on the aquatic life cycle? What's the environmental impact? Every other option, I'm still waiting to find one that is least less than harvesting. Harvesting, yeah, there are concerns about harvesting, but when compared to the others, the concerns are much, much less. And it's the least invasive option to aquatic habitat. Aquatic habitat is terribly important to the lake. We love the lake. Why do we love the lake? Because the natural life cycle of the lake has presented it to a condition that we love. And that's aquatic life and that life cycle. So we have to, whatever we manage, we have to take the aquatic life cycle into consideration. We can't just take what we want. In 2012, we removed 15.5 million pounds of aquatic vegetation from Chautauqua Lake. We have every expectation to repeat that this year. Every expectation. Lake maintenance will always be with us. We also believe that we have factually demonstrated that when we are properly fully funded, we can meet the lake maintenance plant control needs of the lake. The problems have been years that we haven't been fully funded. But we believe we have demonstrated, thanks to the funding that Chautauqua County provided in the last several years, that when they funded us to our full extent, we could meet those needs. This year's budget still leaves 2 harvesters dried out. We will not have the fullest crew out there. Economic realities are what they are. Nonetheless, we're optimistic that the 6 harvesters we're going to launch will keep navigation lanes open, will address nearshore areas, keep docks accessible. We're the stewards of the lake, we're the doers of the lake. No other entity exists locally to perform lake maintenance. There isn't anyone. We take our role seriously. And we are committed to continuing the public-private partnership of how we've worked over these decades. We've developed economically and efficient methods, and we're always working to improve them and to continue them. So most people think that's the CLA story. They come, they harvest millions of pounds of weeds, and they go. There's more to it. And I'd like to share just a couple minutes of some of the more that's to it here. What else are we doing in 2013? The topic for tonight was to say what's happening in 2013. Well, already we've been spending months on preventive maintenance. All our equipment is overhauled every winter in our own shop. Again, saving thousands of dollars. Our staff in the winter, we have 8 people, some part-time, some of those are part-time, that spend the whole winter refinishing the hulls. You know, we just don't put the boat in the barn in the fall, take it out in the spring. Everything's refinished. The motors are overhauled. The hydraulic motors are overhauled. The conveyors are replaced. Whatever needs to be done is done. And we save the community tons of money by doing it in-house rather than contracting it out. We're going to continue the scientific research end. For years, we worked coordinated with SUNY Fredonia. When SUNY Fredonia closed down their program there, we formed a new partnership with Cornell University Research Ponds. And that continues through today, although today it's evolved to the name of Racine Johnson. Bob Johnson is the principal of Cornell Ponds, and he's now retired to use out of their facilities, but Racine Johnson. So we're out there, we're going to be looking this summer at mussel populations. We're going to be looking at plant communities, what's where. Because there's over 40 different communities of plants in this lake, only 3 of which are allowed to be sprayed by New York State. So that gives you an idea on where your future lake maintenance is going to end up. We need to know what's good, we need to know what's bad. We just don't run the lawnmower. It's critically important to the aquatic life cycle. Additionally, we're going to continue our water quality monitoring. You've read the newspaper about the total maximum daily load that's now going to affect dischargers into the lake. It's going to affect stormwater permits. The data upon which that TMDL is based was collected by the Chautauqua Lake Association in conjunction with the New York State Federation of Lake Associations and the Department of Environmental Conservation. We're continuing to collect that water quality data for the state and work with the state on that. We look at phosphorus, we look at orthophosphate, different forms of phosphorus, we look at dissolved oxygen, we look at turbidity, we look at a whole clarity of things. We're out there collecting that data, sending it into the state labs to be analyzed, and that program will continue. Most people don't realize that. And that's the program that will be basing the results when the TMDL takes effect, of how effective the TMDL is. Additionally, we'll be doing additional water quality monitoring. Arsenic is naturally available in the lake. Years ago, sodium arsenite was sprayed in the lake, many years ago, by Department of Conservation. It comes naturally out of the shale, the tributaries. We're watching that. We're watching that very closely. As a matter of fact, we're in conjunction with the results of what the state has found from the tests we're taking. They're going to do special studies on that this year, and we're paralleling with the Chautauqua utility districts, and Chautauqua takes its drinking water from the lake because the levels of arsenic in the lake are higher. They're getting close to the standard of which before they become a concern. They're not a concern that the level is raising. We'll be doing sampling of that in the deep waters of the lake. We're also heavily involved in hazardous alcohol bloom monitoring and sampling. We collect samples for the Department of Health and the DEC, and we'll be this year again monitoring that and reporting that and working with the Health Department to deal with the publicity here should we have hazardous alcohol blooms again. And if we don't have good weed control, we will have hazardous alcohol blooms. We're liable to get them anyway, but they'll be worse if we don't have good weed control. Because weed control allows for lake flow, which mitigates a bit of the bloom at times. Removing navigational obstructions. You always think, when I said we're going to have a 12-week program, that's going to start mid-June. We're not going to address the currently pond weed that comes up before that, and because that goes away naturally. Well, don't realize we had a barge in the lake in April. We were removing trees from the lake this April. Nobody else does that. We do it. And we're going to continue to do those kinds of things. It's very necessary. And collaborate with the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy. Two main focal groups in the lake, around the lake, the Watershed Conservancy and the Lake Association. The Soil and Water Conservation District comes in right hand in hand in what we're doing. I serve as a board member by virtue of my position in the Lake Association on the Conservancy board. Their president, Linda Barber, serves on our board. Their board member, Art Webster, Chautauqua Lake Management Commission member for many years, serves on our board. We collaborate. People say, well, we need to get these groups together and get them talking. I defy. I challenge anyone to come forward and show me how in the last half dozen or more years there has not been cooperation, collaboration, and togetherness. We are together. We don't duplicate. We work well together. And I've got half a minute left. And I'll say this weekend I'll be at the Nixion, the United States Federation of Lake Associations meeting. There we'll be talking with state officials from environmental conservation and health. We'll be talking with other lakes. And I won't be alone there. John will be there too. Our watershed coordinator, Jeff Diers, will be there. The Lake Association realizes it's not just mowing the weeds. You've got to understand the chemistry and the environment. And you have to be sensitive to it. And then we try to put together a coalition of as many community groups as we can to effectively get taken care of. Andrew, is that my time?
Right on.
Okay.
Thank you, Doug. I do remember last year when they didn't get the opportunity to do as many weeds as they would have liked. But when the weeds is still pretty important. Very important. Our next presenter is the District Field Manager of the Chautauqua County Soil and Water Conservation District, David Spann. David.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Soil and water conservation. That says a lot about what we do, about who we are and how. I'm going to try to explain to you folks tonight. Soil and water conservation, we're a very small group. And myself, and I have 2 staff, and a part-time person. And we provide technical services in Chautauqua County. We do earned income. To backtrack a little bit, we have a 5-person board of directors that tells us what we can and what we can't do. Of course, I advise for them. And we have some money from the planning department that we get for our budget. And that brings us into earned income. We have our annual tree and shrub program. We have a fish stocking program. And our technical service, if for farming community, there's no charge, but if somebody has an erosion issue on a creek, or they want a pond development, a new construction, we come out for a small fee and advise them on that. Grants is probably one of our biggest areas to look and bring into the community. We, through the Environmental Protection Fund, unfiltered through the state and non-point source pollution, we've, through these different rounds of annual grants, soil and water over the last 10 years have brought over $7 million into this community. And every year we write for grants, and because of our staffing up until now, we've been limited to how many we can secure and orchestrate. But we're very pleased. We're going to be hiring a new individual who's going to be the face of the soil and water, specifically for our ag community. And we want to create a database for Chautauqua County. And we want to initiate focus on Chautauqua Lake proper first. Okay? And with this database, we're going to know the needs specifically of the farming community to be able to address those needs through these state grants. It's a very good avenue for these producers to be able to improve their farming operations. Education is another thing. We do a lot of stormwater training for contractors. We have an annual marathon event. It's the local high schools. We bring in kids in. It's competitive in a lot of different conservation areas. And we do conservation field days over at Long Point, and we get the 4th and 5th and 6th graders out there, and we're doing stuff for those folks. But just to let you know, up till this point, everybody's been talking about the lake proper, and the soil and water does a lot of work behind the scenes. In other words, we're up here. We're up in this part of the watershed as much as we're in and around the water bodies and stuff themselves. For example, John had mentioned phosphorus load, where these state grants I mentioned there might be, say, $300,000 for Farm X, where with that money we can address manure handling. So this guy has manure storage on there, and they're not applying manure in times where the vegetation can't take the nutrients in. Or more importantly, with that nutrient loading, is just that. They have consultants come out and do soil tests on their fields to determine how much they can apply to a particular field in a given year. So it's not consistently getting the same amount of nutrients on these areas all the time, and then all that excess running into the lake. The highway departments, John mentioned, one of our earned income programs is hydro seeding. We do it primarily for the highway departments, and we'll follow right behind them as they're ditching. We might get a call, hey Dave, I need Bellevue Road, I got a mile opened up, can you come and hydro seed? So we try to get there as quick as we can with the hydro seeder to revegetate that ditch line. And sedimentation is obviously a major concern. And just even this year alone, we're going to be working on 4 farms. And it's mostly manure handling. So our activities, again, a lot of them are behind the scenes, but we're out there working hard, and we're going to continue to do that. Also, there was some mention about the 2% grants from the county med tax money, 3 which goes to develop our planning, and the 2%, which is clean waterways. Tourism is the 3%. So we are instrumental in helping folks administer those grants and securing those grants. Lakeshore stabilization, streetside work, and that's exciting work. We work terrifically as a liaison between the landowners and the agencies. We have a great working relationship. the Army Corps of Engineers and the New York State DEC. They know that we have framework for these permits, so we can get right to the point when it comes to drawing an application in. So we provide a lot of that throughout the course of the year. But I think that kind of gives a snapshot of who we are and what we do. But I just wanted to stress again how fortunate we are to be able to bring this money into the county, these state grants, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thanks, David. That was very concise, and you're under time. You haven't done us any favors over to Sally Carlson's coming next. She always takes extra time. Is that right? Sally is the representative to CLMC for an organization or a group called the, it's just the mayors and supervisors of Chautauqua County. Or is it in the Chautauqua Lake Watershed? You can tell us the official name. Thank you, Sally.
Good evening. I'm really glad to see lots of people from N.Harmony here. Thanks for coming. We all know that we're concerned about the lake. I represent the Intermunicipal Committee. And as you look at this map on the front, it's the towns and villages around the lake. And we're kind of the new kids on the block. But we have a lot of work ahead of us. We're working on a law that will be consistent around the lake for construction. And our aim is to create something between 394 in the lake and 430 in the lake to reduce runoff, to create, when there's new building, people will put in rain gardens and vegetation and do the things that the Watershed Conservancy has been advocating. N.Harmony, I think, has been in the forefront as far as doing projects to reduce runoff into the lake. And I know some of my residents wish we do more. We're trying. But we have done a project at Cheney's Point in the creek, and we have built a weir down there, which is a series of dams. And the first year, we removed 13 10-wheeler loads of gravel from that weir. The second year, we removed 2 truckloads. So we are reducing the gravel that's going into the lake. We've done a project on Lyle Hill, which is a series of step dams, and it has helped for some of that area, but we've been doing hydro seeding. We've been doing a rain garden in Asheville. A number of demonstration projects around the town, and you will see signs that show what work we've been doing with the Chautauqua Lake Management Commission, and I also serve on that board. So I think we are finally making some forward progress for the people that Lyle talks about with the boots and shovels. Unfortunately, a lot of our boots and shovels are in the roadways, but we are trying to create some better conditions in the lake. Thank you.
Intermunicipal Committee. Yeah. Lyle Hajdu is our next presenter. He's the chairman of the Chautauqua Lake Management Commission, and I think that Lyle has accomplished a lot of things in his role. And I want to say that he was largely responsible for moving things in the direction to to have that intermunicipal committee come about. And when Sally says there's new kids on the block, she really just means that, you know, their official working together status was created sometime within the last few years. But perhaps nothing that's been done recently has had so much effect on what we're looking to do. Well, I would like to ask you to come up here and present. By the way, you have 15 minutes, I should say.
I'll use some of Sally's time.
Perfect.
Use it up.
Good evening, everyone. I'm last because I think I may have the least to say. I get the advantage of sitting here and been in cleanup. Tonight you heard a wonderful snapshot from these folks about all the good work that's being done in 2013 regarding the lake and the watershed. And you heard about 4 of our very active players out there: the Chicago Watershed Conservancy, the Chautauqua Lake Association, Soil and Water, and then this intermunicipal committee of towns and villages and how we're all working together. I'm going to use an analogy, I just can't help it, but I'm going to use a baseball analogy here of a team that's fielded. And tonight you heard from 4 of our important players, and they all play an important role. CWC we might have out in center field. CLA is playing shortstop. Soil and Water in left field, and the municipalities are on first base. Key players, but it's not the full team. We do have other players that make up that full team, and they're engaged in activities that address the sewer and septic, that address the agriculture around the lake, that deal with the property owners, the lake owners, as well as the visitors. And that really makes up our full team. One of the things that we realized early on is that there is no single group or entity that is the be-all, end-all with regard to the lake and the watershed. Instead, we have to work together to successfully manage our precious natural resources. There's a wonderful African proverb that I'm fond of repeating, but it says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we are on a long journey here, and we have learned that it's critical that we go together. For those of you who may not appreciate, the Chautauqua Lake Management Commission was created in 2005 by the county legislature. We were set up as an advisory committee of volunteers, and we were made up as a collaborative partnership of these different lake and watershed entities, all with quite an interest in what was going on. But the one thing that we didn't have was authority, and we didn't have dedicated resources, whether it was money, funds, or something else. The first mission they gave us was to figure out what's wrong with the lake and then report back how to fix it. And we successfully completed that mission in 2010 when we came up with the Chautauqua Lake Watershed Management Plan. And it does just that. It talks about why we have nuisance weeds, why we have algal blooms, why we're losing navigable water routes in the lake, how that interferes with our use of the lake, and also why it's happening, which is from our lake is impaired from an excessive amount of inflow of sedimentation and nutrients that are coming from the watershed. So we came back with that in 2010, and one of the priority recommendations was we had to come up with a specific plan for the inlet. We call that the inlet plan, and we're going to have that complete in 2013 this year. And the inlet plan deals with methods of controlling the nuisance weeds. And there's 4 basic methods: mechanical, chemical, biological, and physical. And that plan that is under development is not just going to look at the lake as a monolith, but it's looking at the lake in specific zones based on the unique characteristics of that zone, taking into account how we use the lake, whether it's used for recreation, whether it's used for freshwater drinking, which is it happens in the northern basin. It also looks at all of the fish and the fowl and the critters that we have in the lake and how they interact with certain zones where the fish do their spawning. And then it looks at the conflicts that are created, and then it will come up with specific recommendations depending on specific zones and kind of specific conflicts. And the one thing that we've always advocated for is that whatever we do, it has to be based first on good science. It has to be economically viable, and we also have to have broad community support. So in 2013, later this year, we hope to have that management plan finished. So it all said and done, we have these specific recommendations. Here they are. It's like having a bucket full of good ideas. And another analogy, now what do we do with that bucket? Because as the volunteer advisory committee, having achieved our core mission, we were never asked to implement a bucket of ideas. We were never asked to reach in there and start pulling them out and say, okay, let's go to work. Let's implement these recommendations. And that leads us to what we have taken on is our second mission, which is basically retooling and reorganizing and finding a way going forward to do that. The two things that were lacking on the Chautauqua Lake Management Commission, that collaborative partnership of volunteers, of which these folks are all active members, is that we don't have authority, we don't stand on our own legs. We're created as a advisory committee in the county. The other thing is we don't have resources. We've had folks, both private individuals, organizations, and others who have come forward and said, we'd like to give you some money. And I've had to turn them away and say, I can't accept your money because we don't have a checkbook. We don't have boots, we don't have shovels. As a commission, we don't. Our individual members, and to get to this point, we've been relying upon them by directing funds toward their organizations to perform certain tasks. But we recognize that the best way to manage the lake and the watershed is remaining in that collaborative partnership with all those stakeholders engaged. So one of the activities that we are engaged in now, and later this month we hope to have the first of several meetings, is facilitated meetings where someone will come in, meeting with the core group of the COMC, and then expanding it to the greater stakeholders and public, and looking for an organizational structure for us. We've outgrown our britches. Being advisory committee, we can't implement the recommendations of the plan if we're going to be an advisory committee. So we have to find a solution. People have talked about lake and watershed districts or lake and watershed authorities or nonprofit organizations. Everything has to be considered. So as we go forward in 2013, the COMC as a whole, the members continue to do their good work. We should have our in-lake management plan complete. And then hopefully, we're going to have some new structure to us so that we will have authority and resources to then open up the recommendations that we've made and to start taking them and putting them into actuality. Just want to close. I am also, like Doug said, very interested in hearing your comments. Can I answer your questions? But I just wanted to thank all the member organizations of the Chautauqua Lake Management Commission, as well as even folks who aren't on our commission come to our meetings on a regular basis because they have an active role in the lake and watershed. It's truly amazing how much we've been able to accomplish with a small group of volunteers. Thank you.